Michael Jost is an automotive strategist who anticipates the future to develop a path for success. He is the Chief Strategy Officer of the VW Group. Michael graduated at the university in Hagen, Germany, before he started his career as an engineer in R&D for BMW and later MD for a BMW dealership group. After 18 years with BMW, he changed roles and moved into a consulting group and was in 2010 hired from Skoda as a head of product marketing and strategy. Before, in 2015, he was promoted to the CSO role of the VW brand, and in 2018 as a CSO of the entire VW Group. Michael describes his work as the work of an ecologist who finds remains of a broken vase to anticipate how the perfect vase may look like in 10 years from now. This is the Alex Voigt podcast number 3 about 2 interviews Michael Jost did mid of January 2020. One with Automotorsport, a German media outlet, and the second with Radio SRF in Switzerland. It gives revealing insights into a thought process and how VW does see itself in the battle of one of the most demanding and critical transformations of the group. I will take translated and selected quotes from Michael out of the interview, but not out of the context, that in my opinion explain why VW is doing what they are doing. If you're interested to understand if VW will survive the transformation into BEVs, this podcast may give you valuable insights. To say it up front and to be very clear, I believe the VW Group is doing the right thing, and some managers like Michael Jost are doing their best to shift the VW tanker in the right direction. Since 5 years, he tries together with the group CEO Herbert Diess to change direction, but if we look at the facts today in 2020, we have to be honest. However, in the light of latest developments, his statement shows us also where VW does not succeed as of today and where the strategic plan Michael did lay out does not match with reality. Many reasons are playing into that, and in my latest article at Clean Technica, VW, where are you going? I try to explain some of the root causes. You find the link to the article in the below description. The same day it was published, a high-ranked VW manager commented that the article is surprisingly accurate. This podcast is an attempt to unveil some of the truth underneath the shiny surface. Quote, "If there is anybody who understands Electro, it's probably us and Elon Musk." End of quote. That quote from Michael Jost is really a very bold quote. And that's why I put it on the cover pic of this video, because it gives a notion, understanding of an attitude to believe to be a frontrunner. There is no question that VW is investing a lot in BEVs and trying really to crack the market. No question about that. But to claim to be on the forefront already without even as a VW core brand have delivered a full-blown BEV on a single platform, and I'm not talking about the e-Golf or the Up here, is really bold. Yes, he can say Audi has delivered one and Porsche and they are experienced, which I also would call a very bold statement, because the sales numbers are not so bad but not so good. I mean, they make some, inroads in markets like Germany, where you have a lot of loyal buyers, as well as in Norway, where, that is flooded with Teslas already. But to claim already at that status without even having sold 100,000 BEVs yet to be a leader and to be the only one understanding is, I would say, not a fair statement if you look at Renault or other car makers which are investing in the market much longer and having much bigger sales numbers. So in short, I don't think this is justified, and it gives a little bit of notion how Michael Jost was running the interviews. Michael has a two-step process to define a strategy. The first step he already mentioned before, which is the analogy around the vase, where he finds part of it and tries to identify how the perfect vase or the perfect BEV will look like in the future. And I think that's a fair step. You start with a clean paper and you try to identify what is a perfect product. The second step is, quote, the second step is a much more difficult one of proving that this is good, namely to convince people that let's go down this road, end of quote. This is interesting. So although Michael is saying we define the product in 10 years from now, he's still saying that they need to convince consumers to buy it. In other words, he needs to do something to create demand. If we just look at what's happening with Tesla, where the specifications of the products are extremely astounding, there is not really a lot of convincing marketing, ads, or anything around it needed. You have a situation where consumers are really waiting a long time to get the products, and today, while I record this, there's just a press coverage about the plus 400 mile Model S that is now official, which is free marketing and will create a ton of demand in the market. So, in other words, VW is still on the track that they need to convince consumers, even if they have produced the perfect vase or the perfect BEV, which, in my opinion, is something that doesn't fit together. Quote, and then there is a very decisive point, our customers. We want to take our customers with us on the journey, and the work of persuasion is often much more difficult. End of quote. So he repeats again that there is uncertainty how to create demand, which reminds me to the ICE time. So if you lay out a perfect BEV that is groundbreaking and everybody is impressed, then you usually wouldn't care about demand that much, because demand will come simply because people will love the product. Quote, without a consistent strategy, it's not possible. End of quote. So for me, this two-step approach and what he explained about it is clearly not consistent. Michael did also say a lot of things that are absolutely consistent, and I don't want to appear as someone who is bashing him here or the strategy VW has. So there's been a lot of things like he was saying, quote, burning fossil fuels in cars is not a good plan, end of quote. He said, quote, there is no alternative to electricity in the volume business, end of quote. And he said also, quote, the people want Electro, end of quote. And I believe this should be mentioned. So there are a lot of very good thoughts and ideas he brought into the interviews, and he made clear that there is a strategy of VW to move fully into that direction, and also when. Talking about timing, quote, usually we let 3 drive ahead, but this time it's different, end of quote. What Michael is expressing here is something that is known, which is VW is usually late to the party, but once they are there, they are making the party. So in terms of automotive invention, they are not always the first ones, and this is what he's trying to express. They're usually late, but once they get started, they are the best. That's how we know it from the past, that's their reputation, and he's stressing that. But then he continues, quote, we do not go behind the wave, but on the wave. We ride the wave, End of quote. So that analogy from surfing obviously is a nice picture. So he's trying to indicate they're on top of it. If we just look at the facts right now, where they're standing with the ID3 and also with the rest of the group in terms of BEV developments and market, I need to say that this is just a picture that doesn't apply here. VW have been trying to be early on. They've been investing or announced to invest 33 billion euros. But if we just look at the facts, what this brought to them so far in terms of revenue or units sold, it's less than 100k BEVs they sold. So this is far away from expectations, knowing that VW is selling usually in a normal market about 10 million vehicles annually. At a certain point in time with the German media outlet, they talked about Tesla and about Elon. Quote, "We often say thank you, Elon, because without him we would not have gotten this far so fast." End of quote. These are nice words, and we heard a lot of nice words from VW before about Tesla and about Elon Musk, and I believe this is justified, but it reveals also that the VW Group believes they would not be where they are in terms of BEVs without a Tesla. That's certainly a true statement, but Michael is responsible for the group strategy. And he just is telling us that without Tesla, they would have had a different strategy or would be at a different point, which indicates that VW did not early on make their homework. And if you read a few of my former articles, mainly on Clean Technica, you will realize that I've been trying to put the finger into the wound and explain that the German automakers need to wake up. Quote, "Elon probably has more fans than customers. In the end, we also have many fans, but many customers." End of quote. So that's a really funny comment here from Michael. So the important part is that he's indicating that the customers Elon has and Tesla has are all fans, and they are limited, and once they are, consumed, the demand will go down because there's not gonna be a lot of customers/fans anymore, while with VW this is gonna be different. VW is gonna have a lot of customers and a lot of fans, but the customers are not limited. So I have a hard time. Clearly he is trying to make a case here, but if we look again on the strategy he's responsible for, if that would be the case, then he should not worry about the demand and convincing customers, which he did before a few times. I only brought up one of his quotes and comments about it, but he mentioned it quite extensively. If we listen to what Elon is saying about customers, he's reiterating that every little cent goes into innovation and making the product better, so that the people truly love the vehicles. And, everybody knows that most, or I know only customers from Tesla who really love the vehicle. So he definitely accomplished that. If you talk to VW customers about their BEVs, you find some who are fanboys and who love the brand, be it Porsche, be it Audi, or even VW. But it's just on a different scale. So what he's indicating here in terms of fanboys and customers, in terms of Tesla, is not consistent for me with his strategy and what he's lining out how the VW Group needs to be looked at. He continues talking about the VW customer. Quote, "Customers are more demanding, but not as capable of suffering. Many things Elon makes would not be accepted by our customers, and we would get so many complaints because they are more demanding, end of quote. So that's an interesting comparison. So VW is claiming that the fanboys Tesla has are accepting a lot of issues with the vehicles, while VW customers are more demanding than the ones from Tesla, and because of that, the quality is better and they wouldn't accept any issues with the vehicles like he believes he has seen it with Tesla. So there's a lot of what he's putting into the mouth here of people. If we think about the customer satisfaction surveys we've seen in many parts of the world, comparing the main automakers, we always see Tesla being top notch. So place one or in the upper ranks, having Tesla is quite normal. It's hard to find actually customers that complains very much. Yes, sure, there are issues, different sorts of, like with every product you're buying. So I'm not saying that doesn't exist. But putting this in relation, in particular, in relation to VW and how the customers are seeing the products of VW and what they did, for instance, in terms of the cheating device, I believe it's not only not justified and bold, it's just misplaced to put the finger out and, pointing to Tesla. This is just not really working out well here. Quote, Elon Musk comes to drag coefficient optimized products, which we also welcome because we optimize the DC value further. But I come then, of course, perspectively to a standard product because the physics is the same for all. End of quote. That's an interesting statement. Talking about physics, we have heard this before, where the range from the semi from Tesla with 500 to 800 miles was called from Daimler like physics are the same for all, therefore this is a lie and not true. And we know from many examples actually that Tesla is not making up lies. So they've been announcing before that it's very likely that they're going to release a sedan with 400 miles. And since today we know they made that happen, the EPA range in the US is now officially 402 miles for the Model S, which is extremely impressive and which is way more than what the German automakers are able to do today. He continued with, quote, and there will be with us a healthy balance between uniform design, individual design, and personality, end of quote. This is another interesting statement from Michael. So what he's actually telling us here is, if everybody would get to the full DC focus, we would all have vehicles that look about the same. And that's probably true because the physics are indeed the same. And if everybody would just design vehicles based on that, there would be some similarities. But what we hear is that there is something like an unpleasant feeling from VW about having vehicles that look the same. So personality and identity of the VW brand, the Porsche brand, the Audi brand are extremely, extremely important to the German automakers. And you know that from just the design from the e-tron or the Taycan, which looks clearly on the road immediately like that brand. So identification, personality is critical, which has a lot to do with the fact that the differentiation the German automakers are having is not anymore that much the engine and the drive behavior, but much more the brand value. Brand value is without any question a very important metric and should be looked at. There is no question around that. And VW has been spending billions and billions to create that brand value. And Michael mentioned it a few times to be 33 billion in euros, and they invest this amount in order to manage the transition into BEVs. So they kind of reinventing themselves completely, which makes sense to me because a BEV is not an ICE vehicle. That is indeed a different world. What I'm struggling with here is that he's talking more about identity and personality of vehicles versus specifications and what the vehicles can do and what kind of range they achieve and all of that. This is something he was not at all talking about, although he is engineer and I'm an engineer as well, but I'm in the software or have been in the software business, and he is coming from even R&D at BMW in these early days. And still with VW, he doesn't really talk about what a vehicle can do, but more about what the image of a vehicle should be, the identity and personality, and that they invest money to make that happen. That statement really concerns me. If that is the strategy from VW to turn the image from the old VW ICE days into the VW BEV days, then there is this big risk, and we see this already these days, that the specifications from a Tesla vehicle are that much better that, even customers and fanboys who love VW and the brand will turn away simply because if they get, 30%, 40%, 50% more range for the same price with a nice interior and everything that they need, including charging network, a global one even, then I have to ask myself where the demand will come from. So again, I'm struggling with the strategy from Michael here, from what I hear. Time will tell. In the next question, the interviewer was asking about the strategy from Tesla, and Michael was answering it with following quote: "I find it visionary and courageous. Would it have been possible for us to achieve a majority with it? No." End of quote. That's an enlightening sentence again, because he makes clear that a majority within the VW Group for the Master Plan 1 and 2 Tesla did execute on would not have happened, which is a reference to the voting structure within the advisory board in particular, that is backed by a specific VW Act or law that gives, for instance, the Worker Council a lot of power, and it's gonna be very hard without them to make any decision, for instance, for a plant, because you have to have 80% of votes together. And although the Porsche family has about 50.7 voting rights, the country Lower Saxony has 20%. You get already 70 if these two are together. You still can't make a decision really, which is kind of a very odd situation. And we are talking here in terms of VW about a company where decisions are really hard to make, because you need to please actually everybody in order to go there, which explains a little bit some scandals in the past around the Worker Council and prostitutes and bribery. A couple of really bad things happened a few years ago. I don't want to dig into that, but I just want to highlight where his sentence may come from. However, he is calling it visionary and courageous, and I'm asking myself, why can't VW be visionary and courageous too? What is the alternative? Going into a situation where you are trying to exchange 10 million ICE vehicles you sell annually against 10 million BEV vehicles is not a strategy, and in my opinion will not work. But it looks like VW is trying to do exactly that, so they can please everybody and everybody is happy because workers have enough jobs, the family have enough profit, and the managers can manage the company of a size and with profit margins like before. Shareholders get their shareholder value. So kind of keeping everything like it is, the status quo. And that's for me not a strategy in a major technology disruption VW is in right now. To call Tesla visionary and courageous are nice words, but I'm asking myself, why can't VW be visionary and courageous and has started something new, has started a BEV company, putting, 10 billion in a box and starting with some bright managers a new startup, a Tesla-like startup that can act on their own behalf and grow an organization that is overtaking within the years resources, capacity, and the best people from the old VW group. Because one thing is clear, and I believe Michael understands that, and Herbert Diess as well, the ICE business will go down in volume and revenue and profit over the years. There's no question about that. The only question here is, how can they still be a major automotive company in the future? And to say others are visionary and courageous, but we couldn't because we don't get a majority is like declaring defeat. So I'm struggling with that words because, in particular, from someone who's responsible for a group strategy, for a company that is producing 10 million vehicles every year, I'm expecting visionary and courageous strategies. And this I haven't heard yet. Quote, after a year of losses, we would have faced so much headwind here that we would have changed our strategy. End of quote. He's adding actually that they would have been forced to change the strategy, or which is really very bad. I mean, this is a CSO telling us that he couldn't perform a strategy regardless if it would be the right one, because he feels like they wouldn't have gotten the majority for it. I'm asking myself what the heck Michael is doing here. If you come to a conclusion that what is right for a company is not you get a majority for, you need to fight for that majority. And if you can't get it through, you need to resign, you make a statement, you need to wake people up. It doesn't help to say, we could have done better, but we didn't get a majority, so be it. That really makes me angry. Quote, did Elon do everything right? I wouldn't say everything, many things. He has done many things right, but is not yet profitable. End of quote. So, once again, interesting what he's saying here, which is he believes that the majority of steps Elon and Tesla did perform has been the right ones. And he said before it's visionary and courageous. And on the other side, he's claiming they are not profitable, which is not really the truth. I mean, if you look at the quarters and how long Tesla is making profit right now, it's obvious that they can make profit if they want actually any time. And Michael certainly knows that. They are investing a lot in the future, and they are going to continue to invest in the future in order to grow into a market that is almost empty, because companies like VW did not see it early enough and did not invest early enough and did not bring really good products to market until today, not that they could create a sort of competition to Tesla. And competition is really needed. Nobody wants Tesla having 100% market share. This is nuts. Nobody wants that. We need a couple of good BEV companies in the market for a variety of reasons and for the good of the consumer. Quote, 2020 is the beginning of the transformation. End of quote. What? 2020 is the start? What is about the last 10 years? And even earlier, companies did start to invest in BEVs, and their technology. To claim 2020 as a start is just overlooking the facts and the situation they are in, which is extremely late. So I would have expected a little bit more honesty here. So 2020 is at least in the middle of the transformation and not the beginning. Quote, "We will come in this year to a situation that we will have more than 200,000 EVs and in the year 2025 already 1 million. End of quote. Let's do a quick reality check. Last year, in 2019, VW delivered around 80,000 EVs. And about a week ago, VW declared that they won't be able to deliver 100,000 EVs in 2020, which is half of that what Michael claims they will do. In 2025, which is 5 years from now, VW still claims to deliver 1 million vehicles. And if you compare this to the claims from Tesla, we have to acknowledge that Tesla has much more experience with BEVs, with production, and with demand of BEVs compared to VW. I hope that they can make it, but everything we've been seeing so far, including the issues around software for the highly anticipated ID3 and the IDX models, it's hard to believe that they can manage that. The interviewer asked about the diesel scandal and to what extent it has been a factor in terms of moving in a radical way into EVs. And the response from Michael has been, quote, "Personally, I do not believe he would have been that consequent," end of quote. Which is another revealing sentence because it shows that the scandal itself was a motivating factor and made people think about what they did probably, which is not necessarily something bad, but it also does show that it would not have happened without it. VW would not invest the 33 billion euros into EVs and into everything they need to be able to build and to sell them without the cheating device scandal. Quote, "The American system is where the mistake has happened. It's mainly an error in the USA, a monitoring system in-house issue." End of quote. To be frank, I had to read this sentence 3 times really because it's been so shocking to me. Michael is revealing that the entire problem is a monitoring issue in the US, and without that issue, the whole cheating device scandal would not have happened. This is not good because it shows that almost everything what he said before about reducing carbon footprint as a VW brand for the ID3 as well as the entire production line is kind of empty words really, because the belief is they could have, continued with the ICE vehicles in the US if the monitoring issue, how he calls it, would not have been discovered. I believe this is a shocking statement from a C-level executive from VW. I will conclude this Alex Voigt podcast number 3 with the last quote from Michael. It is a sentence I could have said and I don't have to add anything. Quote, "I am convinced because I drive in the meantime Electro myself and it is simply tremendously cool."